Our word today is bard. Bard, a poet, traditionally one reciting epics, or the bard, as in William Shakespeare. So the thing with the word bard, and this I learned through reading Owen Barfield's great book, History in English Words, is that bard is one of the few extant Celtic words in the English language. Apparently, there are only 12 of them, another being car, actually. Um, Bard, okay, so a poet, a traditional storyteller. So the bards would be at the courts of Irish and Scottish kings, and we might imagine the ancient Britons at them having bards too. And indeed, they are a kind of cultural type, an archetype, in the sense that um, there there are always figures in all cultures whose role it is to um, remember. This is related to the other video um, on the word recollect, the associations with recollection drawing back, gathering up towards a center, the fragments of memory. And this connection between this gathering and recollecting and remembering and forgetting being a kind of scattering of the mind. The bard, the poet, recollects the stories of old, the great figures of old, the great heroes, again, the great types who are exemplary for their courage, for their beauty, for their wisdom, for their vision, whatsoever it may be. The bard remembers and recollects these tales of yore, and as such gathers um, the people together as one, as a poet, as one who maintains and retains a vision and a memory. Now, the definition that I read out was quite short. So a bard is simply a poet or an oral storyteller. But what's a poet, right? We because okay, so the let me go to the Greek now. So the word poet goes into the to an ancient Greek word poesis. And this word poesis actually means maker or like making, and has kind of a creative connotation. Um, the great storyteller J.R.R. Tolkien um, wrote a poem called Mythopoeia, in which he conceived that we make as human beings in the image in which we are made, that the imago Dei, the image in which we are made as human beings, is a poetic one. Tolkien being a devout Catholic, writing from the depths of his faith there. But it would be reasonable on the basis of this word poet, poetry, poesis, to conceive that if there were a creator God from whom all things are made, then that God would be a poet in a certain manner. Yeah. And this insight, it would not surprise me. Indeed, I'm sure it must be the case. But this kind of thing must have been in the mind of J.R.R. Tolkien, with his thought that the poet, that is the storyteller, that is the maker, the weaver of tales, is acting in the creative image in which they are made. This opens onto a whole broad philosophical theme, which I suppose I'll refrain from going into too much here. I'll try to stay with this word bard, the poet, poesis, and to get it. But the theme was the creative essence of the human being, which the Irish monk Eriugena in the 9th century was very sensitive to, and which it is then picked up on by Tolkien and by various other figures like Blake, figures like Coleridge, figures like Traherne, Wordsworth. Yeah, I'm naming lots of English romantics here. I'm naming really lots of poets. Yeah, and the poet is one who makes. So okay, so in this poet, in this deeper sense, this deeper Greek sense of poesis, a poesis is a making. It's a creative activity, and the poet indeed does evoke worlds with their tongue, and through words cast light onto great regions of meaning and feeling. And two, they can serve as ones who who recollect, gather together, draw in the ancestral memory of a culture, those ancient memories, without which a culture is rootless. Thus, the bard has an integral function as a kind of source, wellspring, or font of culture itself. For what are we without these deeper, ancient memories? There is a broader theme here too about the role of the poet, what the poet is, who the poet is, and relatedly, the function of imagination as a great power of the human mind to see beyond the immediacy of the environment, to see beyond the immediacy of just saying the same thing again. To see beyond the world enclosed by our senses five. Um, the world that is given sensibly, and to remember, to remember, and also to envision. You see, I think I'll get on a whole tangent about imagination if I'm not careful. Because I think that imagination, you see, is absolutely indispensable to all thought. I don't think that any philosophy or critical reasoning or um, reason, broadly construed, could be possible without imagining? Can we put ourselves even partially, even in a fragmented way into the uh, the mind and soul of an ancient Greek, an ancient Roman, an ancient Babylonian, an ancient Egyptian, a medieval European, um, or indeed um, our ancestors which preceded history, the Stone Age humans, etc. We have glimpses of vision in the caves at Lascaux, in the figures, the Venus figures that litter prehistoric Europe, and of course the great poems of antiquity, um, the Homeric poems and the the tale and the mythos of the Old Testament, the Jewish Old Testament and the New Testament, and we have ways of glimpsing, but it requires imagination. It requires vision to recollect, to remember what it may have been. And indeed, it must be in some way beyond us. I mean, how could I, in the 21st century, span these many aeons and see as an ancient one did? Um, whilst at one level it seems a stretch to attempt. Nonetheless, the imagination, making a vision, um, cre the activity of the creative imagination is absolutely indispensable and vital, really, to remember to remember how it may have been to see things. And concerning philosophy and reason in general, the function of the imagination there is to look at things in from various perspectives, from various viewpoints. And without that, no dialogue, no progress of reason can occur without having a taking an imaginative or a poetic view. There is, of course, the other sense of poetry, which is a kind of glorification of language, a kind of evoking of the music and depths of meaning in language. No doubt this is why Barfield, who wrote this amazing book, which has inspired this series, History in English Words, which I really recommend checking out, because if you're interested in these etymologies, that's just basically a book of them, and he tells a whole historic, yeah, he does a whole sort of historic sweep with it. Really fascinating stuff. He was also a friend of Tolkien's, and he was also interested in poetry, in literature, and in the English language, and of course one with such interests would, uh, yeah, of course, find it important to look into the roots of words, look into how vision has changed through the ages, how meaning has changed and morphed through the ages. Um, So I think I'll conclude the video. I mean, the Bard was a real historical figure, particularly in Celtic cultures, and its presence, the presence of the word Bard in English is a relic of um, the Celtic memory, which was purged in England uh, for a variety of reasons due to Romanization and then subsequently the Anglo-Saxon invasions. Although the Anglo-Saxon stuff is a bit more, there are some controversies about that, but I think it's fairly well established that some form of enculturation happened. And of course, the obvious thing with that is that English is an angle is a Germanic tongue, which comes from the land of North Germany and southern Denmark. Um, but it's kind of I wanted to say with this video, so the Bard was a historical figure, and the Bard is a poet, and poesis means making or creating, and that there is a sense in which our souls are are a process of poesis, if you say it this way. Like we do make, we are capable of vision, capable of imagination, capable of shaping the words we use, the way we use them, the things we wear, our living environments, where we live, what we do. All of these things are subtly formed, shaped, made by a kind of poesis. So there's a broader, deeper sense here of the creator, the maker, the shaper in this notion of poesis in a deeper sense. And particularly the poet, the power of words to shape, to form, to draw together, to remember, to recollect, and to keep the flame of ancestral memory burning and to keep that great beacon lit. So I wanted to suggest that we all have a bardic calling in a manner, in a certain manner, for we are always using language and we are always shaping the words we use and how we use them and the meanings which are conveyed by them. And in so doing, we are remembering the past. We are bringing into presence in the present those ones who went before, the ancestral memory which is alive in our tongues, and so speaking forth, so creating anew, afresh, and reforging, remaking, and reshaping culture through language. My feeling is that this is happening all of the time, whether we attend to it or not. That is, the human being is a language user. We do, for whatever reason, for whatever reason, we are immersed in this great ocean of meaning that is language, and and perhaps a little reflection on the bard and the really sacred significance of the bardic call um, might inspire us all to yeah, return to the roots, to remember the stories, the words, the meanings, and the ways of seeing the vision and the consciousness of old. And if we were to get even a partial glimpse into such worlds, it might transfigure, transform, and cast anew our world today. So, thanks for listening on this reflection about the word bard. Um, I've already recommended it, but I'm going to do it again. Owen Barfield, History in English Words. It's an incredible read, and it's inspired this whole series. So if this stuff interests you, it's really worth checking out. It's really affordable, and yeah, if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like, and if you'd like to stay around for more content, please subscribe. And I'd love to hear any comments below if you have any. Um, Particularly, I'm interested in yeah, like reflections around this word or the different meanings and permutations that you might find in looking into it. I'm gonna try and provide the resources to look into this stuff yourself. It's all available online. And also other language users other than English. Um, Whether there are resonances, whether there are connections here, because that stuff that I'm interested about that stuff too. Um, I think that's everything from me. Thanks for listening, and yeah, I'll see you next time.